Hello everyone, welcome back to Animation Pilgrimage, where we watch every theatrically released animated film in chronological order. I'm Tennille.
And I'm Sean.
And today we are talking about Disney's Cinderella.
From 1950.
Yes.
Start of a new decade.
Yes, start of the 50s! Woo! So glad to be out of the 40s, and man, what a way to start it. I'm so glad Cinderella starts this decade, because seriously, it came out in February, so...
It's right at the very beginning of it.
Yeah, February 1950. And you grew up with this film.
Oh, yeah. I grew up with this film. This is probably the one film that for, I would say, like the first 5 to 7 years of my life, I watched more than any other film, period. We had a VHS that we watched so many times that the front protection flap fell off. And we had to carefully pull the actual tape out of the VCR multiple times and carefully roll it back up to the point where it finally died, and we had to get another tape, which we then watched quite a bit of as well.
And that's mostly because you had two sisters, but you also enjoyed the movie too, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. My older sister loved this film, and she always got her way because she was 3 years older than me, and I didn't really get much choice. But yeah, so I have seen this film innumerable times. Yeah.
I watched it a lot as a kid, but I don't think it was one we had a VHS of, and, you know, as a kid I was way more attached to, like, animal stories and stuff, so stories like Fox and the Hound or Lion King would be higher on my watch list than Cinderella.
Yeah, no, I watched a lot of princess movies. And a lot of Barbie movies. Just because of how I grew up. And it's not a bad thing.
No. No. So, man, Cinderella, there is so much to talk about with this one. Because, wow, is this a milestone film?
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is one of those films, it's so big, and yet so rarely talked about.
Yeah.
That
it's just like a cultural, oh yeah, Cinderella exists, the thing with the slipper and stuff.
Yeah, and yet, how often do you see something on, you know, the internet which loves to review everything? You know, look at us here reviewing everything. How many people actually talk about Cinderella, though? Not many.
You can't think about it, that there being that many, yeah.
It's like there's a few videos out there, and most of them are pretty good, save the videos that are just like, Cinderella is bad because it was made in the 50s, and then I get angry.
Well, okay. Before we get into a whole lot of all of that stuff, let's give a brief overview of the plot of this film so that people that are unaware can catch up.
And then talk about the history?
Yeah, we can talk about the history after that.
Okay.
It's pretty straightforward, the plot.
Yeah. Go ahead, since you've watched this film so many times.
All right. Long ago, young Cinderella's father got married to a second woman after her first mom apparently died or something. So Cinderella gets a stepmother and 2 new sisters. Stepsisters, in fact, of course. And then dad dies. And then stepmother turns into a royal bitch. And is like, you know what, I don't care about you anymore. I got all the money and stuff, I don't care. You work. And
the movie specifically says that she was abused and forced to work as a servant in her own home.
Yes. And it's like, all right, well, this is a fun start.
Yeah.
But Cinderella never gives up hope and just kind of works with it because she's a good person. And eventually the king is throwing a royal ball for the prince so that he can find a bride. And Cinderella's like, I want to go to that. That sounds sweet. And evil stepmother is like, no. Or yes, But only if you do like these 5,000 things.
Only if you get all your work done.
Yeah, only if you get all of your work done, which we're going to add like 7 more impossible tasks to this. Spoilers, it doesn't work, and she doesn't get to go to the...
It does work.
It does work.
Not because Cinderella didn't get all of her work done. She did. But...
She got all the work done, but she didn't have time to make a dress. But thankfully for her talking animal friend that she's kind to and show kindness in return, fixed her dress up for her. Turns out most of the stuff was stolen, and the evil stepsisters rip her dress to shreds. And they leave, and Cinderella is sad and goes and cries because she tried really hard and it just didn't work. And this was supposed to be like the biggest day of her life.
Right.
So this fairy godmother shows up, and she's like, you know what? You deserve this. So here, have this immaculate dress and this awesome carriage, and all of your animal friends are going to help you get there. And off you go, but you gotta be back by midnight because magic is time-based. So she goes to the ball, meets the prince, they dance, fall in love immediately, it's a good time, but midnight rolls around, she gotta go, and she accidentally leaves a slipper, and so the Duke? Yeah, the Duke is then forced to go all across the countryside to find the girl that fits the glass slipper.
Because an important subplot you missed is that the king is obsessed with having grandchildren.
Yes.
And he's like, it's about damn time my son has kids, so we gotta get him a wife.
But thankfully, the prince, who never really speaks in this film, is actually enthralled with Cinderella and wants to find her as well.
Yeah.
So that's good. But the evil stepmother finds out that Cinderella was the one that fell in love with the prince, and she's like, no, you're locked in your room forever. And all time. Essentially. And thankfully the mice get the key back and let her out just in time for her to get downstairs, try on the glass slipper, and be happily married forever after. Obviously, this is a short version of the story, and I skipped over 5,000 important key points. But again,
I mean, you covered the basics of it pretty well. So anyway, let's talk about some of the history about this film.
Okay.
So this film was being worked on during the package film era, and like the late 40s leading up to the release of Cinderella, this was the big project that either was going to put Disney back in business or completely destroy them. If Cinderella did not do well, Walt Disney Animation Studios was done.
They gone.
Kind of thing. Or at the very least, the animation department would have been closed down.
Yeah, because by this point they had live action going on, right?
Yes. So, and in general, the animation department was kind of becoming smaller and smaller. So it's amazing how I read and research about this film, and so many of the people who worked on the project have so many qualms with the film. They'll be like, oh, Cinderella's not that good, or, you know, it was a picture, or, you know, or you will get brief moments where animators and stuff are like, oh, that was a really good scene, but I didn't feel great about this or that. Which, I did all this research before we watched the movie, and so I was kind of like ready to see the disappointments that they had seen in the movie. But then when we watched it, I was just like, wow, they are so wrong about their own project, because this is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's so good.
And so many of them say things like, oh, well, we had to take shortcuts with the animation, we had to take shortcuts with the backgrounds, and we had to do like this new contemporary style with the songs. And stuff, and I'm just like, man, all these things work in Cinderella's favor, though. The one exception maybe being the animation, because Cinderella is definitely rotoscoped. Like, all the human characters are very much so rotoscoped, with the one exception, or with the few exceptions being, like,
the King and the Duke.
the King, the Duke, and the Ugly Stepsisters.
Yeah.
Their animation's a lot more broad. And then you have, like, the animal characters, which aren't rotoscoped at all, and are all just drawn free range by the animators. And so they're very broad.
Yeah.
Which, in general, makes the art direction of the film, like, kind of all over the place.
Yeah, that's true.
But it also just works. And it could be because our own like, we identify so much with Cinderella culturally. Like, everybody just knows it so well that it's hard to look at it through a critical lens. But do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think I know what you're trying to say. I don't know if I can articulate it either, but I understand what you're trying to say to me.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're all so familiar with Cinderella that it's hard to look at the art direction and be like, yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Even though it is.
Yeah, it definitely is. Because you got these weird roly-poly mice with relatively realistic humans, and then the stepsisters who exist and are very cartoony.
Right. And I was also going to say that the...
And then the gorgeous Mary Blair backgrounds.
Yes, I was going to talk about those in just a bit. But another reason why so many of the animators are very critical on this film is that this was a very difficult film to make. Because of the pressure the film had for the studio. And because of how strict the animators had to stick to rotoscoping and stuff like that. So the animators who worked on Lady Tremaine and Cinderella herself didn't have a lot of fun making this film.
I could see that, but wow, it pays off for
yes,
Lady
it does.
Tremaine especially, because...
Well, and I think Cinderella, too. Cinderella has
yeah.
fantastic animated moments.
It's just like, specifically with Lady Tremaine, it's like her animation is always so reserved and, like, refined and
so subtle. Yeah.
And it works so well to show all of her malicious intent in every movement. Everything she does.
So calculated.
And it works so well, and is why Lady Tremaine is probably one of my absolute favorite villains of all time. Not just Disney or not. This is the perfect encapsulation of evil, petty characters that you could possibly do.
Yeah. She's terrifying, and... You know, if anyone's been in a relationship like that... with an abusive parent or person in their life who is very specifically abusing them, it's like, this probably hits chords. Right. Well, and especially the kind of abuse Lady Tremaine dishes out is not... It's not physical. It's all emotional and psychological.
Yeah. It's like physical technically because she gives her all these tasks, but she's not like physically beating her or anything like that.
No, and that plays more into like a psychological abuse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, and then like with Cinderella, her animation's so much fun because this was something I was talking about when we watched the film. We watched the film with patrons. If you're one of our patrons, you can watch movies with us on occasion. And while we were watching Cinderella, I was talking about how there was 2 lead animators on Cinderella. And one of the animators saw her as being very motherly, kind, or not motherly, but kind, compassionate, go-getter, and all that. And then the other animator, and I wish I could remember their names. I think it was Mark Davis and... I can't remember the other one.
Put them on screen right now.
Yeah, bloop. But then the other one thought of her as a bit more sassy, a bit more ready to talk back when she could, and to
throw in a little bit of snark.
Yeah, throw in snark as like a coping mechanism for her situation. Mm-hmm. And so it's fun to watch this movie because you can see
which scenes were done by who.
Which scenes were done by which animator, and it makes Cinderella wonderfully complex. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, she is a girl that's been beaten down a lot by her family, but
I use comedy to get by.
But, you know, she does have that strong will and perseverance and snark, especially when it comes to dealing with Lucifer, or even when talking to Bruno when he wants to chase Lucifer and stuff.
No, you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, I know you really want to rip that terrible, terrible cat to shreds, but you can't.
Yeah.
So just don't.
Yeah, you better stop having those dreams, because they're going to get you kicked out of the house. Yeah, and then last, of course, I want to talk about Mary Blair's backgrounds. Mm-hmm. I think Mary Blair's art style comes through the best in this film. And we're going to see a couple of more films with her stuff in the background, for backgrounds. And I've seen so many people accuse Disney Studio of, like, watering down her style to work for the movies and stuff. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but Mary Blair's stuff was, like, really, really graphic.
And difficult to animate?
And would be really hard to get other people to animate in that style. Mm-hmm. Especially because the animators fought against having to animate in somebody else's style.
At all.
So hard. Yeah, that's why
that's why there's not
That's why there's not great art direction.
Art direction, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, that's why Ward Kimball gets to animate the cat, because Ward Kimball draws broader characters. Mm-hmm. And, you know, why Milt Kahl often gets to draw the princes, or, like, the straight guy or whatever, because he's a very good draftsman and very good at drawing anatomically correct people. Mm-hmm. Although he also got to animate the King and the Duke.
Stuff. Oh, yeah.
So that was his bit of fun for this project.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the King...
But anyway...
Sorry. Not to interrupt.
Mary Blair's backgrounds are fantastic in this film. And her concept art, which I'm sure I'm putting a lot up for on this one, because I'm not going to be able to play very many clips of this movie. But her concept art is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Just the castle. Mm-hmm. Just the castle. Just full stop. It looks good. Everything about this place is amazing.
Yeah.
I just love the intense, ridiculous height of everything.
Yeah,
It just plays up the fantastical elements of royalty to someone that's not used to it.
Yeah. There's a few specific scenes that's like, that is so Mary Blair. It's like her thumbprint is directly on the movie.
She just took her face and rolled it across the screen a little bit.
Yeah. Any scene involving the stairs in the tower leading to Cinderella's room, and like the angles the camera is at, when it shows, especially like that scene when Lady Tremaine's like walking up the stairs, and it's just such cool composition, and like I love the design of that room and area. But that's very Mary Blair. The whole This Is Love sequence.
So this is love.
Ooh, so this is love. Yeah, that whole sequence, like, her art direction is all over the backgrounds there.
Oh, yeah.
And then another one, which I wouldn't have thought of right away. Well, I guess another thing that is very Mary Blair is the way the carriage looks.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's like, it's one of those that you don't think about right away, but you're like, once you say it, you're like, oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, she definitely. I am sure she
Designed
did like
that.
the original designs for that.
Yeah. But another one I learned from, I think it was a documentary on Cinderella, was that when Cinderella's getting assaulted by her two stepsisters, and the way the background goes from black to red was apparently her call. Which is a very good call.
Yeah. Things get intense. You put angry colors.
And I mean, and that kind of color direction has been used in the past, but not like this boldly. And I think it's definitely left a mark that we will be seeing in animation future for the rest of time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can just think of like hundreds of films that do.
It's like, even though it doesn't make sense, the color palette is going to change now, and it's going to reflect the mood.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Now, this is going to be a really weird segue. But going back to So This Is Love, suddenly makes me think of the two silhouettes scene from, I think it was Make Mine Music.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, was that practice, possibly, for, like, doing this kind of thing? Because it's not fully silhouettes for
it could have been
this scene. It's just, I don't know, just something about it just reminded me of that. Now that I've seen Make Mine Music, it's like, that scene, while not good, reminds me of this concept. It makes me wonder if it was just some of the animators learning how to do ballet.
Right.
Or just
Animated.
Ballroom dancing and stuff.
Yeah. It could very well have been practice, because, you know, I know I've talked about how in the past Walt just always wanted to give his animators more practice, especially for upcoming projects. So that could very well be the case. An interesting about So This Is Love is that it was actually originally a scene where they danced in the clouds, which is something Walt wanted, like, in every film. This is like...
Every princess has to dance in the clouds.
Well, I mean, even in Bambi, there's the scene where...
They're in the clouds.
Where they're in the clouds, because they're in love. Walt had an obsession with falling in love in clouds. In Snow White, there was a scrapped scene where Snow White imagines her and the prince dancing in the clouds. Yeah, that never got put in the film. And in this one, he also wanted the dancing in the clouds, which they ended up scrapping and putting in This Is Love. And the only time that the dancing in the clouds for a princess actually happens is in Sleeping Beauty, which we won't get to until the end of this decade.
Hey, hold on.
What?
I can think of one other Disney spin-off movie that has dancing in the clouds.
I was talking specifically about for Walt.
Okay, that's fair.
What were you thinking of?
I was thinking of the Three Musketeers with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy movie. Because there's totally a dream sequence where Mickey and Minnie are dancing in the clouds.
I mean, that is probably
an homage?
Direct reference to Walt.
Oh, yeah. Like, as you're talking about it, it's like, oh, that's why this is here.
Yeah, it's an in-joke. Like, I would bet money.
Okay, we can go back to Cinderella now. I want to talk about some of the gorgeous effects animation that was done in this film.
Oh my god, it's so good.
Specifically with the fairy godmother and her sparkle magic of gorgeousness.
Wonderfulness.
Like, oh my god.
There's a reason every time that they release this movie, they have that animation of Cinderella getting the new dress. Because, god damn, those sparkles are
It just looks so good.
Beautiful.
The way that they just fall just looks so good.
And this is a good time to remind everyone that, like,
There was not computers back then.
That shit could not be just like, all right, I'm in Photoshop. Here's my sparkle brush, and I'm just gonna dab it on this. No, it's like each one of those had to be hand drawn, and then that drawing had to be taken over to the ink and paint department, where women would take the artwork that had been drawn on, and for each frame they'd put a cell on top of that, and they would paint each sparkle white and perfect and beautiful, and then move on to the next drawing. And then all of those cells then had to be transported over to the multiplane camera, where they would put that on top of the cells of Cinderella transforming. Although, actually, no, I think that's all in one cell.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But, like, those cells will then be placed on the multiplane camera with the background underneath, and then anything else, like any other background layers on there. And then a photo would be taken, and then they move on to the next frame of the movie.
Oh. Oh, man. Traditional animation is so meticulous and insane. Especially when you get into the special effects zone, where it's like, this is the extra fluff that is going to be super expensive and
time-consuming.
Yeah, very time-consuming. Just like, it's going to eat all of your time. And it's like, I know Disney had a few guys who's like, all right, you guys are going to become my effects animators.
I feel 95% positive that scene and a lot of special effects animation was done by Mark Davis.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. It's just, it looks so good, and like, the weird, it's like, also just like when the pumpkin is weirdly dancing with its weird limbs and then like starts bouncing and then just like sparkles into the actual carriage. It's like, oh yeah.
Well, and even like the sparkles like picking up other creatures and stuff to transform them.
Oh yeah.
It's like this. I read all the time whenever I do research on this movie. It's like, it's always like, oh man, we had to take shortcuts on this film. It really could have looked better, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? It's gorgeous.
Oh, and just...
like, I remember...
like, the super subtle, like, sparkle, like, motes of light slowly increasing towards the center to fade into the fairy godmother sitting underneath Cinderella. I just love that so much. Just like, you need some calm magicalness there to comfort you in your time of need.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is I remember reading specifically on Andres Deja's blog, Deja Vu. I'll leave a link for that down in the description, by the way. I'm gonna leave a couple of links in the description because there's a couple of really cool Cinderella stuff I want to share in this video. But on Deja Vu, he has a post where he's talking about Cinderella, and Andreas Deja is one of the Disney Renaissance animators who actually was trained and got to talk to a lot of Disney's 9 old men before they passed away. And he remembers talking to them about this film, and one of the things that they complained about was the fact that the cups, when Cinderella's putting like the cups and plates on the different platters, and she's gonna take them up for everybody for breakfast, they aren't perfectly oval or circular or something. And Deja's like, on his blog, he's talking about this, and he's like, I rewatched the movie and I kind of see what they mean, but I mean, these guys were just so particular about their own work.
That's amazing. I love that.
It's just little things like that you're just like, man, that's what you guys are upset about? You've only made one of like the most memorable pieces of film ever. And you're worried about the cups on the platters not being like perfect perspective ovals.
Oh man.
I spoke about deja vu, though. I also want to point out another video. In this video is, if you have time, check out this other video that's really good. It's actually one of the few videos on the internet I can stand that talks about Cinderella, because this person actually seems to have watched Cinderella recently. And it's a video called like Cinderella, Stop Blaming the Victim. And they talk about how a lot of people see Cinderella as a poor role model for girls nowadays. How she has to be saved by a prince from her circumstances, and she doesn't do anything to try and get out of her situation. And, you know, if her situation's so bad, she should just run away. And this video is like, come on, guys. She's someone who grew up in an abusive family, has nowhere to go. But anyway, I don't want to go over all the points of that video in this video. Mm-hmm. But I do highly recommend it. The person did a great job explaining all their points. And yeah, I just want to say that I think it's really sad that people say or think that Cinderella isn't a good role model for girls or for anyone, because she is. This is the same problem I have when people
don't like Snow White.
It's like, you are searching for something that was never meant to be there. You're searching for, like, Cinderella to go up and punch Lady Tremaine in the face or something, and it's like, that would not solve her problems. Cinderella takes agency in her own story. Mm-hmm. She does. Honestly, just watch the movie again, because if you think Cinderella is a passive character, you need to rewatch the film.
Yeah. It's like, she does things. Mm-hmm.
She embodies compassion and kindness.
And perseverance.
And perseverance.
That perseverance, yo. Dealing with this crap on a daily basis for her entire life.
Well, and there was, you know how I was talking earlier about how the two animators on Cinderella saw her differently? Mm-hmm. There were a few deleted scenes in Cinderella that were cut, or scenes that were tweaked anyway. Okay. Where Cinderella would come off as a bit bitter or resentful of her situation. Mm-hmm. And the story guys at the time, when that was what they were going to go with, were like, oh, well, you know, if we were in this situation, we'd be bitter. It's like, this is a realistic way for her to act. But when Walt saw it, he's like, no, you have to take that stuff out. Because it makes the audience less endeared to her plight. And it makes her, like, the whole point of Cinderella is that she earns her happy ending. If she's bitter or resentful in the film, that takes away from that victory. It makes it so, like, she doesn't deserve it as much.
Yeah. But no, she definitely deserves. Mm-hmm. She deserves everything that she gets.
Yeah.
The good stuff.
yeah, the good stuff, not the bad. She doesn't deserve the bad.
I guess we never really got into the king and the duke at all, but these are two very fun comic relief characters. Oh, yeah. Like, everything that they do, all of their shenanigans, is so fun to watch. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the king.
And it doesn't feel out of place with the rest of the movie either.
No. The king is kind of one of those that I forget about his subplot until you get to the first scene, and then I'm like, yes, oh my gosh, yes.
I love this insane king. Uh-huh. This very angry man. Because that's a very good way to describe him. Uh-huh. Very angry.
Yeah. No, I love the comedy between those two. I guess I also want to talk about one of the criticisms. Another of the criticisms hurled at this film is the B plot with the animals taking up too much of the runtime. And I was specifically watching for it this time. I'm like, alright, yeah, I remember the animals. They do take up quite a bit of the runtime. But then when we watched it, I was like, actually they don't.
No.
They really don't.
They really don't take up a whole lot of the film. And it's I can only think of one scene that might have benefited from being just a little bit shorter. Mm-hmm. And it's like the first scene with Jack and Gus outwitting or not getting eaten by Lucifer when they're getting breakfast and stuff. It's like, yeah. I could see that scene getting cut down just a little bit, but other than that, I don't think any of the other scenes outstay their welcome at all.
Right, and my big problem with that criticism is that people seem to be saying like, oh, well, the animals serve no purpose other than to add comedy to the movie. And I'm like, no. That's not true. Okay, that first scene that we were just talking about where they're all getting breakfast and stuff, that sets up, Cinderella's compassion towards others, even towards mice and, just all the animals around her. She's makes sure that everybody gets their fair share, and when Gus gets picked on, she gives him more and stuff. But then, not only that, but then Gus then later gets her in trouble with the stepsisters and the stepmother.
Which just introduces that whole, situation that Cinderella has with her family and how abusive they are to her. It's like, it just sets up a good point where it wasn't her fault at all, and yet they're willing to blame her no matter what happens.
Right. And we also see the parallel between Cinderella and her abusive family and the mice and the cat, have similar relationships with each other. Mm-hmm. Where it's like...
abusive.
Right.
Abusive just seems like a
abusive. Yeah. And yet again, instead of letting Gus getting eaten for being stupid, Cinderella saves him from Lucifer again, just showing her compassion and kindness. Mm-hmm. And then you have the scenes where the mice are getting Cinderella's dress
put together, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, okay, this is an important part of the film. This is integral to the plot, so...
And it also shows that the mice can actually outwit the cat.
Yeah.
And, showing that Gus is not completely useless.
Along with being good comedy scenes.
Yeah.
These are good comedy scenes, but they also serve the narrative.
Yeah.
And then they really aren't in much of the movie after that, other than the fact that they're the ones that help Cinderella get out, yet again, because of the parallel between the mice need to overthrow the cat, and Cinderella needs to overthrow her stepmother.
Indeed. Yep.
And Cinderella sees that own... she knows that it's a parallel between them as well, because she's the one who says, get Bruno. Because Bruno's the one who wants to get rid of the cat.
Bruno is me!
Bruno is me!
That scene where I was telling you not to have dreams of killing your hated enemy, that was me talking to myself.
But yeah, so it's all the story beats with the mice that are in there for good reason. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really, really, really enjoy all these aspects of this film. Mm-hmm. It's there's a reason that I was okay with watching this film 500 times as a kid.
Oh yeah. It's just a good movie. And I forget how good it is. It's one of those films that's... I know I said this a lot for Cinderella, but or for Snow White, but it's so easy to take it for granted.
Yeah. But it's just great. Mm-hmm. Everything about it's great.
Now, if we are going to talk about things that did not age well, with this film.
The prince needed more lines.
Did he, though?
Maybe not.
I mean...
He says, like, one thing. Wait, where are you going? Come back!
Oh, I haven't seen the prince yet. Prince. But don't you know I'm... Goodbye! Oh, I love it.
When can I see you again?
I don't know. I don't think the prince... That's another criticism I never understood for this movie, is the prince needs more lines or needs more character, because Cinderella's not a story about romance. It's a story about perseverance and escaping abuse.
Yeah, it's just, he's there as kind of the end goal, I guess? Of just kind of like the reward?
He's not a reward. He's just...
I don't know.
That's just... Like... This is hard to put into words. Like, I know how I feel about it, but it's hard to put that into words exactly. So, Cinderella was going to the ball, not to fall in love.
No.
She was going to the ball just because
She wanted to have a good time.
She wanted to have a good time. She wanted a night off, and it would be fun. But instead, because of her kindness, and because of her hard work, and her beauty, and caring about others, the prince finds her.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizes that beauty in her. And so then he becomes the ticket to get her out of her old life.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's because Cinderella has worked hard for this. She didn't know that this is what, like, she didn't go out seeking this.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of like, God looks down and smiles on you today for being such a good person.
Essentially.
You made it.
You did it.
You made it,
Good
Cinders.
job.
Good job. A++. Have a prince.
So he is a reward.
No, he's not. But kind of. But, like, whatever. No, what I was gonna say, the one thing that hasn't necessarily aged well is probably the treatment of the ugly stepsisters.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, the only other two younger women in this movie are ugly, bumbling, idiot women.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that leaves a slightly bad taste in my mouth. Which Disney does kind of try to retcon a bit in the sequel movies.
Both of them.
In both of them. But not with both stepsisters.
No, only the one.
Just Anastasia.
Sorry, brunette, you don't get any love.
Drizella. Also, I think she has black hair.
Black hair?
Yeah,
the
so
dark
you're
hair.
completely off.
Redhead wins.
Redhead wins. Yeah, and I wouldn't call that a major complaint. It's just kind of a...
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know what else to say about this film other than it's fantastic, it's great, I love it.
If you haven't watched this movie since you were a kid, or even if it's just been a few years or at all, you should definitely watch this movie.
Mm-hmm. It's like, this is one of those films that... something I was going to say earlier is like, this movie stands among the greats of Disney all time. It is like the amazing balance between the utter seriousness of Bambi and like the way too comical nonsense of Dumbo.
Dumbo's not comical nonsense. I mean, it's pretty serious.
I guess, but like a lot of the theming and tone, like just put those together to get this film. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's a very good happy in-between those films. So it's like, if you like the one and not the other, maybe try this one out or something.
Yeah, like, this film is not my personal favorite Disney film, and even just limiting it to the
What
silver...
we've seen so
okay, if we limit it to what we've seen so far, this probably is one of my personal favorites. But, you know, now we are going to be looking at Silver era.
The Silver Age.
Yeah, the Silver Age.
Disney animation.
Yeah. And that goes from Cinderella to Sleeping Beauty.
Okay.
And out of those films, like, I can't say that Cinderella is necessarily a personal favorite of mine, but technically, like, if I had to give a more unbiased opinion, I think it is the best one.
Probably. I don't remember every single one of the other films in here, but I know that this is a very good film.
And it saved the...
Even by Disney standards.
Let's go back to the you know, historical ramifications of this movie here for a second. This movie was bonkers insane popular, which should not be surprising to people.
Once again, Disney got another hit song out of their animated film, because they always do. And this time with Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo.
Yep. Yeah,
So
Bibbidi
let it
Bobbidi
go.
Boo played on radio. It was so popular.
You thought you were annoyed of Let It Go.
Let me tell you about Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo.
Or You're Welcome. Or Hakuna Matata.
We'll get to a Hakuna Matata.
Oh yeah, but this was the one of this age.
And I mean, I think the movie deserves it.
Oh, yeah.
In leaps and bounds. It's a fantastic film. But yeah, so this movie saved the company. They made billions off of this film. And they still make billions off of this film.
It's very true.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this is... I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is the castle.
Yeah, it's Cinderella's castle.
It's Cinderella's castle. This is the Disney castle that, when you think of the Disney castle, this is it. It's like, sure, it's been redesigned a couple of times, but this concept, this idea, this adorably tall castle.
Adorably tall. Oh, as an extra note, not to end on a negative note, I guess one of the other, like, this movie shows its age kind of things is when the mice say, leave the sewing to the women.
You go get the trimming.
That's the 1950s showing right there.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's almost like you gotta appreciate the fact that Jack and Gus wanted to help do the sewing.
To help make the dress. Yeah.
It's like, I appreciate that.
Yeah, they didn't just be like, well, we'll leave the sewing to the women and we'll go get the trimming. No, they had to be told.
Yeah, it's like, that point of that, I appreciate.
Yeah.
That line in general is still kind of like, but I do appreciate the gumption that the guys were willing to help. And, like, not even just willing, wanting to help.
They were
that
running
part.
with scissors. So excited, ready to help.
And don't run with scissors, kids.
Chids.
Chids.
No, instead, go watch Cinderella.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Go watch Cinderella. And in the meantime, join us back here next time for our next film, which is the first French film?
Yes.
The first French film, which is Jack the Giant Killer.
Johnny
the Giant Killer. I'm sorry. The other J name.
Yep.
All right. Well, either way, see us back here next time for that movie.
Bye-bye.
Hey, here during the end card, just a reminder that you can support our Patreon and get all the cool rewards that come with that. You get to be part of the art streams. You can watch future Animation Pilgrimage movies with us. If you get to the high enough tier, you can actually see every single video we put out early before everyone else. And if nothing else, you get to also join the Discord server and have a fun time chatting with Tennille, me, and everyone else on there. It's a good time.